8 months ago, I dropped out of college, packed up my car, and moved across the country with less than $1,000 in my bank account. I was working 50-hour plus weeks, basically making minimum wage to pay rent. The stress of that was crushing me. I couldn't sleep. It felt impossible to make videos, which was the whole reason I dropped out in the first place. Now, just 8 months later, I have almost $20,000 saved and invested, and I've been able to move out for the first time in my entire life and pursue what I actually want to do, which is making videos just like this. And I wouldn't have been able to do it without these 6 things that I'll show you in this video, starting with number 1, simplifying your finances. So the first thing that I want to talk about before we start worrying about the debt, the savings, the job is to just make your finances as simple as possible. When I was going through this literally every single morning, as soon as I started thinking about it, I felt like my head was going to explode from the pressure and the stress. And the last thing that I needed was to have complicated finances. I didn't need multiple bank accounts, credit cards, and payment due dates. So the first thing that I would recommend you guys to do is call up all your different credit cards and loans if you have them and ask them to move the payment due date to the first of the month. If you have multiple credit cards, the payment due dates are going to be all over the place. And you can literally just fix this by calling up your credit card issuer like Amex, Discover, or Capital One and asking them to move it to the first of the month or whatever date you choose. This is all about keeping things as simple as possible. It's kind of like if you guys have ever tried to do homework when you have a really messy room, your mind just feels scattered and it's really hard to make any progress when your mind is in this disorganized state. The next thing that I did was go ahead and freeze all my credit cards. So this means going in the app and pressing freeze card. That will stop any more transactions from happening on your credit cards. If you are in credit card debt or are in risk of going in credit card debt, you need to use a debit card. I've made over 150 long form videos about credit cards, and I know the upside to them, but I also know how bad they can be. It's literally financial cancer if you're carrying a balance on your credit cards. The rewards on your credit cards are never going to beat the interest. Let's say that you had a credit card with a $5,000 balance at a 25% interest rate. That's $1,250 that you're paying in interest every single year. Even with a 2% cashback credit card, you'd have to spend over $60,000 on the card just to make up that interest. Probably the biggest mistake that I see people make with credit cards isn't choosing the wrong rewards card or redeeming your points wrong. It is continuing to make purchases on a credit card that you're still carrying a balance on. So what I did was get every payment on the first and then freeze all my credit cards to have everything come out of my debit card instead. This is also going to stop a lot of the bleeding that happens because a lot of the subscriptions that are on your cards that you don't notice are not going to be able to go through because your cards are frozen. The next thing that I did, and I wish I did this way sooner, was actually just saving my first $1,000. You don't need to save $10,000 or $25,000. Literally just saving your first $1,000 will change your entire life. When I was in middle school and high school, I saw my family constantly living paycheck to paycheck. And when I got to college, which is when I started paying for everything for myself, all my food and tuition, I basically carried that same thing into my own financial life. I would have all my money go into tuition and then I wouldn't have any money, literally none saved up for anything else. I remember there was times where I'd literally call my brother and ask him to Zelle me $10 so I could just get Chipotle. It sounds almost weird to admit, but it felt weird actually having money sitting in my checkings or savings account. Like I was so used to it being empty that when I had money in it, it felt like it was literally like burning a hole in my pocket and I had to spend it. So when I saved that first $1,000, it almost felt like weird and wrong to check my bank account and actually see money just sitting in there. But after a couple weeks of that, you actually get used to just having money sitting in your savings account without having to feel like you need to spend it. And the amount of stress that went away after I just saved up that first $1,000 was honestly insane. Like I still had payments due and I still had debt and I needed to figure a bunch of stuff out, but just knowing that I had a little bit of money to my name made like a huge difference. Also, this is an insane stat, but over 50% of Americans could not cover a $1,000 emergency with having to go into debt. So just having that first $1,000 saved is literally the most important money that you'll ever save in your life. And it will already put you ahead of 50% of Americans, which is absolutely insane. All right, the next thing I did, and this one might be a little bit controversial, but it was focusing on increasing my income instead of being overly frugal. So I was basically working as a server server at a really cheap chain restaurant, and where I live, they only pay us $2 an hour. So basically everything that I made comes from tips, and a lot of people just simply wouldn't tip. So there would be shifts where I worked like 7 or 8 hours and only came away with less than $70, which is literally the worst feeling in the entire world. But one day I just got so fed up, I went to a coffee shop and made a resume and applied to every single fine dining place in the city that I lived in, which took like 2 hours. And then the next morning when I woke up, I got 4 emails back asking for interview times. And then a week after that, I had a job that paid me literally double what the last job was paying me. So instead of going to the same job over and over and over and worrying about being super frugal, within 2 hours, I basically doubled my income. I could have done every single one of the frugal habits. I could have never went out to eat ramen every single day, not flush the toilet to save on gas or whatever, water bill. But with the extra money that I earned from working 3 or 4 shifts, I could literally go to Chipotle every single day and still be way ahead than I was with my old job. I'm not really speaking to the people that already have like 50, 60K a year salary jobs. I'm speaking to more of the wage slaves like me. What I've noticed with every single one of these low tier jobs that I've worked is that when you're working there, they'll try to convince you that that place is the best place that you can work and you won't be able to find another job. They'll basically try to make you feel like this so they have less people quit and to lower the sort of like churn that they go through with employees. But every single time that I have left a job when I wasn't happy with it, it's been like one of the best decisions I've ever made in my life. But basically what I'm trying to say here is, as much as I would like to tell you all the cute things about saving money and living your frugal life, the truth is that I didn't get out of my financial situation by being super frugal with money. I got out of it by keeping my expenses low and tracking everything. But I wouldn't be in the situation I'm in right now if I didn't put most of my focus on finding how to make more money. I also want to be very clear. I'm not saying to not budget or track your money. This is one of the most important things that I do. You need to know what is going into your account and what is going out of your account every month, or your inflow and your outflow. All this time, I've tracked what I'm spending and making. I use Monarch to budget. Copilot's also pretty good if you have an iPhone, or if you're just using one debit card for everything. That also makes it easier to track with an Excel spreadsheet, or just do it by hand. And just like being able to save $1,000 will already put you ahead of 50% of people, just by tracking everything that you make and you spend for just 1 month will already put you so much ahead of the curve, and it'll basically make you feel like you have a little bit of control over your finances, even if everything else is still kind of out of whack. So what I then did after basically getting out of the trenches is build boring systems. Basically, everybody has goals. They want to buy their first house, save their first $10,000, invest their first $100,000. But the majority of people fail not because they don't have goals. It's because they don't have the right systems in place. Basically, everything with my finances is automated and I have boring systems for. For example, as you can see, every day on the first of the month, I automatically have $500 go into my savings account. I also have $750 go into the S&P 500 every week on Monday. So instead of leaving it up to willpower and motivation, I already have decided how much I'm going to save and invest. As far as creating a system to pay down debt, I would recommend first saving up that $1,000, maybe a little bit more, depending on how bad your debt is and how much risk you're in. But after that, I would have all my extra money go to pay down the highest interest debt first. So basically the debt that is costing you the most money. Let's say that I had a credit card and a car loan with both $10,000 of debt, with the credit card at a 25% interest rate and the car loan at a 5% interest rate. After 1 year, you would have an extra $2,500 to pay on the credit card and only $500 extra on the car loan. That is obviously a huge difference. So if you're working with a limited amount of money to pay off debt, start with the highest interest rate first and just keep paying the minimum payments on all the rest of the balances. Basically put out all the biggest fires first that are causing the most damage. And for now, just ignore the fire alarm beep in the background. The last idea that I want to talk about is this idea of financial minimalism. And that is that there is really just nothing to buy. Like, my income is pretty much 3x since I was in the trenches, but In my life, literally exactly nothing has changed. I still drive the same car. I still eat the same food. I still do the exact same things every single day. And that's because there's just nothing out there to buy. Like every day you wake up sleep deprived, you doom scroll, and then you go to work and take orders from your boss like a good boy. You think having a nice watch on or driving a BMW is suddenly just gonna make you happy? You guys remember Sean Kingston? He's like the "You're way too beautiful," that one. But basically, he had a bunch of songs that blew up when he was like 16 and he made millions of dollars. But then after that, instead of investing in any of it, he bought a bunch of watches and a bunch of cars and jewelry. And a couple years later, he was arrested because he wasn't making payments on any of the things that he was buying or loaning. And he lost like all of his money. And there are a bunch of stories of celebrities like this. But do you think the watch or the car or the jewelry, you think he rolled out of bed at 400 pounds and that suddenly made him happy? There's this concept called hedonic adaptation, but what it means is that your brain basically gets used to new stuff way quicker than you'd think. There was a study at Harvard that showed that almost everything that you bought, the happiness that you get from it stops after a couple weeks, if it even gave you any more happiness in the first place. And people who saved money or spent it on experience had way higher long-term happiness than people that bought material things. But basically, whatever you buy, your brain adapts and then it just becomes normal. And all you're left with is the debt or payments that you have afterwards. All right, last thing that I want to leave you with if your finances are cooked is that things are going to be really stressful, but just make sure that you have one thing that you do every single day, even if it's only 5 or 10 minutes, that makes you happy. I know it's easy to just doom scroll or watch something or do something unproductive after you have a long day at your shitty job and you have all these things stacking up. But from what I've found, doing something a couple minutes a day that you just do for the love of that has no financial gain, a couple minutes a day will really just completely change your outlook on life. A couple years ago, I read the book Shoe Dog, which was basically about Phil Knight. He was the guy that started Nike and he went through a bunch of crazy stuff. Like there was like 10 times where he for sure thought he was going to lose his company and everything that he worked for. But he said the only thing that kept him sane was going on a 10-minute run like once a day. Like just doing that and getting out of the house and getting away from everything and doing something he loved, like completely reset his mind, which is really cool. If you guys want to get started with a good budgeting app, I made a full tutorial that shows you the best one and you can click that video right here.